Like the global citizen that I strive to be, I always love to push well outside of my comfort zone into other cultures, traditions, wisdoms, and practices, especially in these divisionist times. But of course, our COVID travel restricted time that we live in has forced a sort of different game plan, if you would, where I have to consider resources closer to home, in my own backyard, both literally and figuratively. Sometimes wisdom is as obvious as it is in a fortune cookie from your favorite Chinese food restaurant. And again, I'm reminded of the parable that the greatest, most epic journey we can take is the journey of self. For certainly, I've been on that journey, and it started in the mountains of Nepal. And today it brings us to Bushwick, Brooklyn, to talk to a new friend, an artist, and his 108 views of Buddha. I'm Jeff Oppenheim, and I invite you to join me today for tomorrow's journey. Today, I was venturing out on my own Buddhist journey. I packed a small rucksack, all right, really my camera gear, and headed out of the shrine, and all right, my studio. I headed out on my walkabout from the Far East, well, the Upper East Side, to the west of Brooklyn. I was meeting up with a new friend, Arthur.
My name is Arthur Kwon Lee. I'm a Korean-American visual artist working in New York City.
I'd gotten to know him and his work during his last exhibition.
I'm most known for painting religious iconography or cultural universalities and stacking them with the saturation of unique color combinations and gestural mark making.
He and I both professed to having an appreciation for two forms of art. Well, one, the visual arts, of course.
I'm very much not really a postmodern kind of painter, even though we are in Andy Warhol's postmodernism still. I'm kind of a strange new classic, trying to make the ancients in a very approachable, attractive, young fashion.
The other, martial arts.
I often tell people that I put down the sword and I picked up the brush.
My own introduction came through a television show from my childhood called Kung Fu, starring David Carradine. So, like Cain, armed only with my own arts mastery, I pushed into the frontier of Bushwick for a conversation with Arthur. We met this time in his studio where he was preparing for a big exhibition that seemed indefinitely put on hold. In many ways, Arthur is like Cain himself. Well, if Cain was played by someone of Asian heritage with martial art experience, but certainly similar in the way that Cain carried both the warrior and the artist within. Arthur, looking around the studio, I can obviously see Buddha represented here, so therefore the natural connection to Asian art, but very clearly I'm seeing classical European style painting as well. Talk about this duality of schools.
So there's a couple things about that. So the first notion is I am a Korean American person, and I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. I went to art school at GW. But I think more interesting is that I feel like people who grew up in two different cultures have a psychological advantage in seeing the cultural assumptions of one culture by looking at the two in comparison. And that sort of explains the roots of why I'm exploring the language I explore. The origin is putting Asian and American or Western Greek roots onto the same surface.
You talk about the duality in your work quite a lot. Let's break that down a bit.
I was trained by this scary 4-foot Korean woman who didn't take any crap from anyone. And she taught me very strong habits in regards to painting from a very classical approach.
When you say traditional?
Traditional European. Yeah, she was Korean woman, but she was painting like a masterclass Westerner. Yeah. But it's funny because even during that whole time, I grew up under a family that was very philosophically and religiously oriented. So I was very conscientious of both being a child of two cultures in the home whilst having all these different religious texts and this education, this nexus around me. So then I go into art school, the Corcoran School of Arts, and I was the last class of that program before they merged with George Washington University. And I studied with Jeff Huntington, Bill Newman, Janice Goodman, OGs.
That's a church of its own, is it not?
Absolutely. The school program, we'll call these professors the ministers in that regard. So what happened there was with the skill set that I acquired of traditional classics, I often tell people the Band-Aid was ripped off, and they basically told me, you have this skill set now, and what are you going to do with that tool? And what I did is I went back to my attraction towards dynamic mark making and intensity. The universality of what you see in all my works is you can describe it with the word intense. So the intensity in conjunction to my conscientiousness of comparative religion and spiritual attraction, that's kind of how I tied together my style.
Arthur, I also have to say I love the floral and fauna that struck me when I saw it at the gallery that time. And in the bigger works especially, it just emanates off the canvas there. Let's talk about that as part of the richness of the journey that you want to bring the viewer through.
In Taoism, they'll say, Taoism isn't Buddhism, but there's affiliations there, right? There's this notion that you can't win against nature, but you can win with nature. The physical world is an extension of our bodies in that way. So we need to, in many ways, leave nature to its homeostasis. So the Buddhist perspective, or the spiritual perspective, because again, only a part of me is Buddhist too, right? The spiritual dimension in this is to go in and let it go and let God in a way.
Well, let's address that theme of appropriation of culture. Certainly, there is a habit of selectively, in white communities, adopting and appropriating aspects of, I would probably say, a hodgepodge of Asian culture. But it seems to me there's a little bit of play in that in your work that I'm seeing here.
I don't even worry about that. You have to go where the art takes you, right? So if a person has resonance towards a statue that was sculpted by the Greeks, you know why? Because my body is telling me this is beauty. So I'm gonna excavate it. It is what it is. Like whatever touches me, that's where the art is taking me. So you have to go where the art goes, regardless of what people say. That's number one if you're gonna be painting at this level. But the second notion is that there's only two ways to make art that's transcendental. There's only two ways. The first way is a communication with the unconscious. And a lot of artists do that, and that's one way to go about that. The only problem with that is often it can become vague, miasmic, and mystical to the point where there's nothing undifferentiated and it's not, it lacks cohesion. That's the risk. The other way is the excavation into the symbolic. And that's what I'm into. I think you can't excavate symbolism unless you are appropriating other cultures. Even the show that we're talking about right now, I'm commercializing these different Buddhas, right? I'm making them, this sort of pop art color sensibility of colors with these Buddhas. And if a person's ready to be offended, then they might be offended. But I think intent is huge. The intention is so big. As long as you're not being disparaging, I think that the spirit of it is fine.
Why 108 portraits of Buddha?
108 is a sacred number in Buddhism. So the six senses, including consciousness being one, you multiply that by whether they're painful, pleasant, or neutral. You multiply that by whether it's internal or external, and then which is 2, and you multiply that by past, present, and future, and that makes 108. So that's the sacred number in Buddhist teaching. For me, the experience I want people to have is that you're walking into this gallery and it's immersive. There's a bunch of Buddhists just looking at you. It's like the Matrix. And it's been very time consuming, but it is a labor of love. And the repetition of painting these Buddhas forces me to meditate on the symbolic story that I'm consistently finding different ways of getting to the same point with these different figures.
Well, point of clarification, I think when you say Buddha to most Westerners, we think of one image, one man. But here, you've presented us with 108. Let's talk about that.
The one guy that is usually painted is this gentleman named Siddhartha. And he is like the classic marketable Buddha. But there's actually thousands of variations of Buddhas. Whether you go to Pakistan, India, South Korea, Japan, it's all across the board. It all comes from the same source. And once you understand the universality, you can predict pretty much how the external world is going to behave. So there's actually a nucleus that I'm always trying to point back towards with all my paintings.
Art unto itself can be that cathartic experience, that spiritual journey, if you would. Is that part of your goal?
I often call paintings transcendental mirrors. Actually, art, ideally, the art gallery is supposed to promote certain conversations that are important. That's the idea. And people have different stances on that. And mine is to, have people look at religious symbolism as not just something outdated, some authoritarian image trying to keep you down or that's watching over you, but more that it's actually so much more fun if you understand how you're so linked to the deeper parts of the universe.
What I've also noticed about your work is there's such an incredible and inherent sense of color, such an energy force, a life force, if you would, coming from the work.
Well, duality is right there, right? So this, you look at the yin and yang. It's funny because when I was studying Zen, I had a calligraphy teacher, and she told me, all you really need to know is yin and yang. Everything else is secondary. I do see what she's saying. Not that everything is black and white, but certain grays are darker and lighter than the other. So it still has this idea of polarity. Whichever part of the spectrum you're on, polar thinking is something that people should be conscientious of, because you can't understand up without understanding down. You can't understand left without right. You can't know where you stand without the opposite side either. So it's actually all polarity. So I want to sort of show that, and in that same way, I'm trying to use that with color though. The color wheel, I'm always trying to show that contrast. That's why my art pops out at you actually. If I had a bucket of like orange balls, let's say, and I put one blue ball in there, where's your eye gonna go? The blue ball, right? That's contrast. If I put 50 blue balls and 50 orange balls and mix it up, it kind of looks even. So if I now do that with a bunch of different colors, but I need to somehow make the viewer's eye go in and out in a way that's rhythmic for the composition, that is a very complicated puzzle. That's the discipline that I put in to be able to pull that off.
Wait, you also reference calligraphy and martial arts. Now, those both have a discipline to them, no?
I was sharing with you that whether it was me, getting these medals in Taekwondo or winning Artist of the Year last year, all these things, the only things I excel at are such individual disciplines that has a deeper truth in it. And I think, art is a universal language, so that's what I hope to share with my painting, right?
Here's the dreaded artist question. Is there a message that you really hope to leave the viewer with when they come see your work?
Two things. First is people new to the art world or the idea of collecting art, whichever level you are in regards to getting art, put some art on your walls. It doesn't matter if it's my art. Just put some work on your walls because it's an investment that has immeasurable value. You put something that resonates with you, that you connect with, and you put that up onto your wall, it permeates into your whole home, and it will bring a different energy into it. The second notion is more personal for me, what my goals are with my art making. So I believe we're in such an irreverent time. The normalization of decadence is abundant. And what I want to do is I want to bring back some sort of awe or something, a taste of the sacred again. Because we're at this point, we're at this precipice with technology, pornography. If you just look at the level of monogamy today, it's just out the window. It's such a mess today that we need to kind of go back and realize that those borders are there for a reason, and we can appreciate it deeper if we have that context. So I'm trying to bring that back, but using all the tools that we have today in modern painting.
The lesson to take away that none of us, including Buddha, are truly just one thing, living just one life, even in one lifetime, nor do we need to be. It is, in fact, our layered complexity that makes us so interesting and offers an array of things to others.
The most beautifully poetic way I've ever heard it put is that the universe is the dance of the self.
And on the very personal level, My visit with Arthur and his 108 Buddhas offered confirmation for me in my own work. It demonstrated the right effort for the right livelihood, certainly a reoccurring theme in my own artistic life. I thank you for joining me today for tomorrow's journey, and I invite you to like, comment, share, subscribe, one click away. In the meantime, you can also watch the other episodes previous to this one and the one more to come. I'm Jeff Oppenheim. Till the next time, stay safe, stay well, and stay enlightened.